VCY America presents Crosstalk, a nationwide call-in program discussing issues that have an effect on our families, our communities, our churches, our nation, and our world. Crosstalk, an opportunity for you to voice your concerns for biblical principles. And now live by satellite and around the world on the internet at vcyamerica.org. Here is today's Crosstalk.
Well, hi there. Nice to have you with us on Crosstalk today. We live in strange times, don't we? Well, many of us, of course, have been interested and concerned with first of all, we'll talk about the czar industry, where all of a sudden we've been seeing all kinds of people being brought into our national government as czars. I thought all this stuff was up in Russia, but apparently we've got it in our government as well. Well, the czar thing, of course, putting somebody in charge of, even catastrophe czars and you name it. Everybody gets a czar heading. But one of the things that has really raised a deep concern in the ire of people across this country has been what we call executive orders. Executive orders. Instead of going through Congress, the top of our government, the President of the United States, simply makes an executive order. One has to ask the question, is this dictatorship or is it bypassing government? Well, today we're going to talk about this, and our guest is Jim Kouri, the 5th Vice President and Public Information Officer of the National Association of Chiefs of Police. He has served on the National Drug Task Force and trained police and security officers throughout the country. He also writes for many police and crime magazines. And Jim Kouri, welcome to Crosstalk.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you.
Jim, our focus today is going to be on amnesty and the measure that President Obama gave by executive order this past Friday. And, of course, the lines have been buzzing, and all of the talk shows and the pundits and all the people out there saying, what in the world is going on here? But let's focus on some critical news of yesterday that the House Oversight Committee voted 23-17 yesterday to hold the Attorney General of the United States, Eric Holder, in contempt of Congress. Now, these are a couple of issues, and I'd certainly like to hear your thoughts.
Well, on Eric Holder, I personally have always had a problem with him as the Attorney General. I had a problem with him during the Clinton administration. I worked as a cop in New York City, and I remember the FALN, which was a Puerto Rican terrorist group that committed a number of crimes. They committed armored car robberies, bombings, and one bombing killed a police officer. Another bombing blinded a police officer. And Eric Holder, during the Clinton administration, was part of the Department of Justice. He came up with the idea. Now, you have to remember, Hillary Clinton was running for senator of New York. So Eric Holder came up with the idea and presented it to President Clinton of giving amnesty to the terrorists who were in prison, who were serving life sentences for basically murders and bombings that they committed in New York City. And, well, we all know that that's exactly what President Clinton did. So Eric Holder has always had a soft spot in his heart for terrorists. When he was working in the private sector, his law firm represented about 20 of the terrorists that are being held in Gitmo. When he became the Attorney General, one of the first things he did was start to investigate CIA people. In fact, he had to back down because the president found himself in a situation where he needed the Central Intelligence Agency to keep him on top of things as far as terrorism and as far as what's going on in the world. And so he had to back down. But originally he wanted to grab a bunch of CIA agents and put them in prison. So, Eric Holder has always been a problem for me and a number of my colleagues. We also remember during the 2008 election cycle. The Black Panthers in Philadelphia intimidating white voters. The Holder Justice Department did nothing. Absolutely nothing. In fact, whistleblowers came out and said that they were told to drop the case. And then you have other incidents with Eric Holder, for example, calling returning veterans, along with Janet Napolitano, the Homeland Security chief, calling veterans returning from Iraq potential extremists, potential terrorists, but denying the fact that Islamists are terrorists. So over and over. In fact, they have a column coming out today, just came out today, about a lieutenant colonel at the War College being fired because he mentioned Islamists being responsible for terrorism. So we have Eric Holder and to a large degree his boss, Barack Obama, who have their own agenda, and they're using basically the Justice Department to push that agenda.
You know, as we talk about the issue, of course, Amnesty, the measure that the president gave by executive order this past Friday. And then, of course, we look at the standoff here with Eric Holder. I mean, thousands of documents have been requested by Congress. And ultimately what happens, he's stonewalling them. And now, after all of this excuse-making back and forth, and then that he's willing to compromise, was his words, now all of a sudden it is executive privilege.
Well, I don't know how that's going to, legal experts that I've spoken to tell me that this is unprecedented. If the president knew nothing about the Operation Fast and Furious, and that's what this is all about, this abysmal operation, if the president knew nothing about it and he's not mentioned on any of the documents, then executive privilege would be attached, unless, of course, the president was aware of Fast and Furious. But it still speaks of a cover-up, and especially for an administration that promised to be the most transparent. I think they're the most secretive administration we have seen in a number of years.
Now, next week, the full House of Representatives is going to vote on the contempt charge. And if the charge is upheld, is there any penalty associated with this, or is it just a smudge on his record? No,
they could. It'd be up to the Congress. They could go for criminal charges. In other words, he is held in contempt, and there is a penalty for contempt. It's like contempt of court. I don't know what the sentence would be. I would imagine it's considered a violation, which is the lowest offense, and would be up to maybe 15 days in jail. I don't see that happening, but they do have that option. But I think that having the Attorney General hit with a contempt charge is enough to remove the guy from his office. I mean, he's supposed to be serving the American people. He serves at the pleasure of the president. I understand that. But he serves ultimately the American people. And he has not been looking out for the American people's best interest. Just this week, I mean, we're all talking about Fast and Furious, but this guy, Eric Holder, has sued Florida because they're trying to get rid of the bogus voter registrations that they've been swamped with. They've already found 180,000 illegal aliens who are allegedly voting in Florida. These are illegal aliens. In other words, these are people who are basically canceling out, disenfranchising American citizens, canceling out their votes. Eric Holder, instead of helping the state of Florida. He's suing the state of Florida because he says they should not be doing that, that they're affecting minorities by doing that. Well, if the minorities are not citizens, then they shouldn't be voting. It doesn't matter whether they're minorities or majorities or whatever. You have. They should be voting if they're not American citizens.
Well, Jim, as I hear the conversations that are coming out of the White House, they will make moves that are supposedly temporary, but they have a lasting impact. And they'll make moves that seem to be insignificant, that once uncovered, they find out that they are very significant. And when you see what is happening, first of all, this temporary thing, talking about amnesty, of course, the president says it isn't amnesty.
Yeah, right.
But who's being deceived here? Well, the things that are happening in Washington really have us deeply concerned, and I've never seen so much. Today, the U.S. Commerce Secretary, John Bryson, resigned. And if I understand correctly, he is the subject of a hit-and-run investigation in Los Angeles, and the president accepted his resignation. And the big question, is this a smudge on the president, or is this of no effect?
Well, they're saying that it was because of a medical problem. But, it seemed that they were quick to get rid of this guy, and believe me, that's what it was. I don't think he resigned of his own volition. I think they told him, listen, it's time to leave. This is, nothing is going to stop Barack Obama from winning in November. He's not going to allow anything to stop him. And he's certainly not going to allow a person who works for him to screw up his plans for a second term. So I expect we're going to see other people who are going to leave for family reasons, there are going to be other people leaving soon, including I have no qualms about him throwing Eric Holder under the bus. Maybe in the next couple of months, because first of all, he wants to win in November, and second of all, Barack Obama, in my opinion, and this is the opinion of people who are experts, he tends to be sociopathic. Now, that doesn't mean he's a criminal, but he has that sociopathic behavior. Whatever is good for him is his priority.
Well, as I see this, the growing concern that the president is usurping the authority of Congress by means of the executive order. Now, this past Friday serves as another example of the president changing our immigration laws by a stroke of the pen. And share with us what you can on this.
Well, I think that, first of all, the president should think about what he does before he signs these executive orders. First of all, you're talking about 800,000 to 1 million illegal aliens that have to be processed according to his own executive order. Do we have that mechanism to do that? Are we going to have to hire more people to do that? How much is it going to cost? In manpower and in time. There are a lot of things to be considered. It's very easy to say, well, we're going to give amnesty to 1 million people. But exactly how are you going to do it? During the Reagan administration, I remember, during the Reagan administration, President Reagan allowed a partial amnesty for certain individuals.
Jim, we're going to have to break just for a moment.
Sure.
We'll be right back in 60 seconds. This is Crosstalk.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, scientist and creation debater with the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, what's happening with global warming?
Chris, the Earth is undergoing global warming, sort of. But it may just be a cycle and the Earth will cool off once again. It seems that the Earth has several feedback mechanisms which protect it. You see, God has designed the Earth well, and here's one of those feedback mechanisms. It looks like the coral reefs give off a particular chemical when it gets too warm, which produces a cloud-like effect, which then shields the coral reef from excessive sunlight. The coral and the algae living on the reef know just when to do this, and it can cool off the Earth, ending a global warming cycle. Chris, it's amazing how much forethought got put into creating this Earth. God accomplished this marvelous engineering design back in Genesis.
To discover more facts that support your faith, visit us on the web at www.icr.org. That's www.icr.org.
And welcome back to Crosstalk, where we're talking today with Jim Kouri, the 5th Vice President and Public Information Officer of the National Association of Chiefs of Police, and has served on the National Drug Task Force and training officers and security officers throughout the country. Also writes for many of the police and crime magazines, sharing vital information. And today, of course, we're talking about some of the interesting things. Mr. Eric Holder. And first, what started out as just simply stonewalling or not coming across with information, then finding redacted messages that have been totally obliterated. And then what was requested by the Congress was only a limited amount. And then finally, Mr. Holder agreeing that he would compromise. And then all of a sudden, in the 11th hour, coming by and says executive privilege is what keeps from sharing that vital information. Executive privilege. This really, we've talked about the Declaration. I mean, the declarations and authority that's being claimed by the White House is deeply alarming.
Oh, it is. The fact is that this is a White House that is the opposite of what it claimed it would be. They said they were going to be the most transparent administration in the history of the United States. They have been anything but transparent. Today, in fact, the Border Patrol agents, through their union, demanded that Eric Holder resign. Eric Holder, right after Fast and Furious, when they discovered that Brian Terry, the young Border Patrol agent, was killed with one of the guns that was part of this fiasco, Fast and Furious fiasco. When he found out about this Border Patrol agent, it never occurred to him to call up the guy's family, to call up his family who were grieving, and to offer condolences. It never occurred to President Obama to call up the family and offer his condolences. Whether or not they were responsible for Fast and Furious or not, this was a brave law enforcement officer who died in the line of duty with a gun that should not have been in the hands of the bad guys because of Fast and Furious. And they have never called the man's family. I remember when that young woman, because Rush Limbaugh called her slut or whatever he called her, the president called her up to console her. Now, it turns out she was a Democrat operative, so, right away I'm suspicious that this was all a set-up job to embarrass a talk show host that speaks out against the Obama administration. But putting that aside, it never occurred to them to call up this Border Patrol agent's family. Also, there's another agent that doesn't get as much attention, Jaime Zapata. I wrote about that when it first occurred. Jaime Zapata was an ICE agent, Immigration and Customs Enforcement agent, who was in Mexico City, at the U.S. consulate, discussing how they could better monitor illegals coming across the border. During his trip back to Monterrey, he was assassinated by members of Los Zetas. Los Zetas is a drug cartel, one of the deadliest, if not the deadliest, in Mexico. It turns out that he may have been killed with one of the firearms that were smuggled into Mexico as part of Fast and Furious. So as far as I'm concerned, 2 American law enforcement officers were killed as a result of this operation, and whether or not President Obama had anything to do with the operation, as the President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief, he should have at least called the family of these 2 officers, which he never did. But he will call somebody who's a Democrat operative who got called a name and offer his consolation.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about two major items here on the horizon. No, they're right with us. And we're talking, of course, about Eric Holder and the fact that he is being called to task, and the question, what's going to happen? Are charges going to be developed? And if so, what's going to happen with him? Then, of course, we talk about the exercise of discretion. That's what Janet Napolitano says that the president did when he literally declared the young illegals, that's a term that nobody wants us to use, but Obama suspends deportation for thousands of illegals, and he tells the GOP to pass a DREAM Act. Now, the issue is, again, is what you call it going to make a difference? Whether this thing is temporary, whether it is permanent, whether it's going to be passed by Congress, but the president simply going right around Congress and doing this, making this declaration. Now, folks, these are things that you need to be concerned about. An exercise of discretion and not amnesty. Big question. Now, bear in mind the new plans for the illegal immigrants now. The president on Friday announced that the illegal immigrants 30 and under who meet certain criteria will not be deported. And the plan applies to approximately 800,000 young people currently in the United States. Now, the big question, Jim, that comes up, and that is this. Is this going to, we're talking about 800,000 people, and we've got college students looking for jobs this summer, and the unemployment that we see, the fact that these young people who could tighten competition for jobs and, of course, the right to go to college, this all affects our economy. It affects our work. Am I overstating it?
No, you're not. You're not. Listen, the left wing of the Democrat Party, of which Obama, Holder, Napolitano, and the rest of that crowd belongs, the left wing of that party has no regard for American citizenship. I believe, and again, this is my opinion, not the Chiefs of Police Association's opinion, although many members share it. We believe that the ultimate goal is to basically disenfranchise American citizens. As time goes on, citizenship means less and less and less. In fact, in some instances, being a citizen could hamper certain things. For a perfect example, I know of a family that attempted to get a HUD, one of the HUD houses, a mortgage on that, and they were turned away, yet HUD gives the illegal aliens a break on these mortgages. Also, American citizens just can't transfer money all over the world without the federal government being notified. However, a new rule by the Federal Reserve Bank allows illegal aliens to transfer money, especially to Mexico or El Salvador or those countries south of the border, without reporting it to the feds. So who is that helping? It's not helping the American citizen. Actually, it's helping the drug cartels because they can move their money very nicely, electronically, using the banking system.
Sir, let me just say this. I'm involved this summer in a lot of building projects, which involve some very large sums of money in paying for transmitters and wiring money to various suppliers. And many times they want immediate transfer, so we use the electronic means. And if I'm over $10,000 or whatever that I have to authorize, they want to know what it's for.
Right.
They want to know, and we have nothing to hide. It's for a transmitter, it's for an antenna, whatever it is. And if you deposit under or withdraw a certain amount, you've got to specify what it is for. And folks, this is serious business. And we're talking again where you have what is appearing to many of us as amnesty, with 800,000 young people, and then pushing. We just heard how many, you just mentioned how many illegal votes were found in Florida.
Well, why do you think Obama passed that executive order. He wants the illegal alien votes. There was, and I'll give you a perfect example of what I'm talking about. In California, and I can't remember the name of the two people running for Congress. I wish I could, but I remember during the 2010 election cycle, I believe it was the 2008 election cycle. I'm sorry, it was 2008, and the female Democrat told she was speaking in front of a Hispanic group of illegal aliens. One of them asked her, said that he couldn't work on the campaign because he wasn't a citizen. And she told him, oh, he could work on the campaign, and as far as voting, you don't need papers. And they caught it on tape. Of course, she lost the election following the revelation, but the mainstream media squashed that story so fast it made your head spin. But the fact is that we know that illegal aliens are voting in this country. What's to stop them? I live in New York. In New York and in New Jersey, across the river in New Jersey, all you have to do is check the box that you're an American citizen. Nobody asks for identification. Nobody asks to verify your citizenship. And so they take your word for it. And does anyone really believe that people are telling the truth on those forms? When you have Acorn picking up people by the busload to have them register to vote. During the protests, you remember the summer we had all the protests of illegal aliens across the country?
Yes.
Why was Acorn there registering people to vote? These were illegal aliens. Why? Nobody asked the question, why is Acorn there? Of course, Acorn is now dissolved or to a certain extent.
Let's just say it's renamed, okay?
It's renamed, right. But, the fact is that there are people out there voting who should not be voting. And I'm not just talking about illegal aliens. Legal aliens, green card aliens, shouldn't be voting either. Prison people who have been convicted of felonies and are released from prison are not supposed to be voting. Whether you're for or against that law, that's the law. And nobody is enforcing that law. Any state that attempts to ID people before they're allowed to vote comes up with a lawsuit, or they're harassed by the feds, especially the Department of Justice and Eric Holder. Arizona is a perfect example. They pass a law, they get sued. They want to check voter identification, they get sued. These states are strapped for money. They can't print money the way the feds do.
Jim Kouri, the 5th Vice President and Public Information Officer of the National Association of Chiefs of Police. He's our guest today, talking about, the Eric Holder mess. We're talking about these executive orders. And, folks, I'm holding in my hands, while we were on the air, my good friend Gordon Morris went over to a computer and downloaded, would you believe, the list of executive orders that have been created by President Obama. Would you believe I'm holding 14 pages of executive orders, and at about an average of 10 to the page. 3, 6, 10 to the page. And 14 pages of them, and some of these are the most, even blocking the property of senior officials from the government of Syria, and all kinds of interesting things, some of them very obscure, but he's been busy making pronouncements. We're going to come back. We're going to open our phone lines and find out what you think about what's going on with Mr. Holder and the Amnesty, and we'll let you talk with our guest.
On a national level, the Secretary of Defense has warned of cyber terrorism and the devastation such an attack could bring. On a personal level, computers and the Internet continue to revolutionize the way we live. But is our increasing dependence on these technologies stealing our privacy and setting us up for a devastating fall? In the book Cyber Meltdown, biblical apologist Ron Rhodes addresses Bible prophecy and the imminent threat of cyber terrorism. He examines what a cyber attack in the U.S. would look like. What new technologies seem to be paving the way for fulfillment of end-times prophecies in the Bible? How terrorists and opposing nations are using cyberspace as a weapon? how computer viruses spread and personal privacy has been compromised. To obtain your copy of Cyber Meltdown, send a donation of $17 or more to VCY America, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin 53208. To donate by phone, call 1-800-729-9829.
And welcome back to Crosstalk, where today we have been talking about some of the latest things happening out there. Jim Kouri, our guest, involved in law enforcement, a man with years of experience in serving communities and a man who knows law enforcement better because he lives it. But right now we're going to open our phone lines, our telephone number, if you'd like to call and make a comment. What about this situation with so-called Amnesty? Maybe you'd like to comment on that. Or what do you think should happen to Eric Holder? And what do you think will happen? The phone number, 800-733-9829. 800-733-9829. Looking for your calls from across the country and literally around the world. If you're listening in some other country, simply dial the United States code and dial on in because it's toll-free. So be happy to take your calls as you join us today on Crosstalk. And Jim, I'll tell you what, I'm sure people are concerned, but you know one of the big things, people are asking the question, what can we as Mr. and Mrs. Citizen do?
Vote. Americans have to go to the polls in November and vote. I think that in the last election, for whatever reason, whether they didn't like Bush's policies or they were war-weary or whatever it was, people were looking for a change. Unfortunately, it wasn't the type of change they were looking for that we're seeing today in this Obama administration. But there's nothing more powerful than a vote, and also calling congressmen. Listen, these guys, they do react to telephone call. A lot of people think that their phone call would be a waste. That's not true. I have seen congressmen change their minds based on phone calls that they get from angry American constituents. These guys, they want to stay in office. That's what motivates them. Once we understand they don't do things out of the kindness of their hearts, they do things for pragmatic reasons so that they could stay in office. Then once you realize that, then you know how to deal with these guys.
Well, right now we're going to take a break from our conversation, go to the phones, and we're going to go to Sue, is clear across the country in Hermiston, Oregon, listening today. And Sue, you are on the air with our guest, Jim.
Hi. Well, I just cannot believe that these people have not gone back and looked to see what Goering did, Himmler did, Hitler did, and wanting to stay in office because you got brownie points. Well, they made it for a while, and then he who had the biggest gun survived. But we are selling this country out completely. And that's all I had to say.
Well, thank you, Sue.
She's absolutely correct. In fact, that's what Fast and Furious was really all about. It was about gun control. It was a canard. They were working with a canard that originally you heard Hillary Clinton, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, blame the United States for the violence that was going on in Mexico. She claimed that they were getting the guns from the United States. Now, I know for a fact, I have friends that have worked in Mexico for the DEA and other federal agencies. They've been assigned down there. They don't have to get guns coming across the American border into Mexico. They can get guns from anywhere in the world. These guys are multi-billionaires. They could pay for guns from any country. We already know that Iran is in Mexico. They have Iranian intelligence people throughout South America. They are arming a lot of these countries, a lot of these despots. So, blaming the United States was the objective of this whole Fast and Furious thing.
And what you're saying there, Jim, guns are made. I mean, I've got a gun or two that are made in a foreign country. There are guns out there that are very fine pieces of firearm, but some of them are coming from other countries, European countries. Craftsmanship, great. But the issue of, as you well said, just coming across the border here, you can get them cheaper. You bring them in through Mexico.
That's right. The fact is that, they wanted to show the American people why we need tighter gun control to save lives in Mexico. And it blew up in their face. And they continue to try to control firearms. They continue, for example, they're trying to pass legislation, or were trying to pass it, but the GOP wouldn't go along with it. They wanted to put serial numbers on bullets.
On the bullet themselves. Shell casing.
They want to control our weapons. They don't care if you're law-abiding or not. They do not want Americans armed. And
Jim,
I'm always suspicious of any government that is afraid of its own people.
Jim, we're going to go to the phones right now. Got a whole bunch of people from all over the United States calling in. Right now, Sean in Tennessee, you're on the air with Jim.
Well, I think that what the problem is, we're going to continue to see more of this because too many of these people as citizens, as you say, sir, who, let's say in the words of Jesus, swallow the camel while straining a gnat, and their own families, and they fail to see the bigger picture. And I personally have been declared even by my father as, quote, living in a dream world for pointing out things like what we're talking about today. So there really is no hope, I guess, in a lot of people in the masses, but there's still a few of us that will step up to the plate and will speak out about this.
Thank you, Sean. Appreciate that. We're going to go to Girard, Pennsylvania, and talk with Niles. And Niles, you're on the air.
Hello?
Yes, you're on the air, Niles.
Oh, yes. I would make a comment. I do think that holders should be gotten out of there, but I'm also of the persuasion that no matter who Obama will put in, they will be persons that are in the pocket, so to speak, of Islam, and we're going to see the same kind of things going on. My vote does count, and the only thing that counts more than that is prayer, and I think prayer can change things.
Amen. But
we're being sold down the drain for the ungodly in the nation, and unfortunately I know too many who call themselves Christians, born-again believers, who won't vote because they'd rather not vote than vote for the lesser of the two evils, and I think that's one of the difficulties that we're facing.
Niles, thank you. From Girard, Pennsylvania, we go to Elk River, Minnesota, and Beth, you're on the air.
Hi, yes. I just have a comment. I just cannot understand why they are not considering, or there isn't some talk about impeaching this lying crook that is in the White House. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Beth, just a question. Where's Elk River, Minnesota located?
It's about 30 miles northwest of Minneapolis.
Oh, 30 miles northwest. Great.
Right off of Highway 94.
Great. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for your call, Beth. And while we're on the subject of Minnesota, I'm looking forward this weekend, Sunday morning, speaking at the Grace and Truth Bible Church in Aurora, Minnesota. And then Sunday night at the big revival service, the big tent services in Virginia. And so we're looking forward to meet many of our listening friends there as well. Let's go to Iron Mountain, Michigan, and talk with Gary. Gary, you're on the air.
Hi. I'd just like to give my little rendition from the book of Habakkuk.
Okay.
I believe that God has put Obama in office. And this may sound a little strange, but God is preparing a chastening rod to be an avenging instrument in his hand to wake up the people to vote properly. Because instead of using Obama in that book of Habakkuk, use the word Chaldeans. Or I should say, instead of using Chaldeans, use Obama. You'll know what I mean when you read it. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for the call. By the way, folks, may I say what our calling friend certainly says? It's very easy to see some of the meanderings and wrongdoings of those in high office. But it's not just the high office that's got the problem. We look at our country today. I mean, same-sex marriages, debauchery going on, sex abuse. I mean, you're talking about violence of all kinds, worse than ever before. One of the things, I was up in northern Minnesota this past month, and a report was given that, in fact, by a school official, said that Minnesota ranked the highest in areas where there were shootings within schools. It was one of the highest where there were gun issues that were in public schools. So, folks, we better clean up. We need to make some choices as far as who we're voting for, but also take a look in the mirror and see what's going on in our country. Lorraine in Minnesota, you're on the air. Hello, Lorraine.
Hi there. I would just like this consideration to be taken. Divided we fall, united we stand.
Okay.
Ron Paul gave us an example. There will not be enough scattered votes to be most effective for him. He placed his behind Romney. And we have a better chance of constitutional rights and with Romney. And we all have responsibility, not to just leave it to the people we place in office, but to encourage them and stay with them by telephone or whatever to do the moral duty that we expect from them. And where does judgment begin?
In the church.
The church. That's it. Thank you.
Lorraine, where are you calling from? What part of the country?
Tower, Minnesota.
Tower, great, up there by the iron mines.
Yes.
Thanks so much. Glad to hear the iron mines are open again.
Yes, amen.
That's
God
great.
bless you.
Thanks, Lorraine. Okay, one call here. Before we take the next call, Jim, your thoughts on the calls here coming through.
Oh, I agree with, I guess I agree with all of them. My pastor was talking about what's going on in this country, and we do point fingers at the president and congressmen and senators and police chiefs and doctors and everyone else. But he was talking about the conditions that we have in this country right now. And then he said that if God does not do something soon, then he owes Sodom and Gomorrah an apology. And it really struck me that it's true. If he is the same yesterday, today, and forever, this country is in deep trouble, because we are turning our back on those principles which this country was founded on.
That's right.
Judeo-Christian principles. Whether the founding fathers were Christians or Jews or atheists, it doesn't matter. The principles were laid down, and so the Constitution, without those principles, is really hollow. There's not, and a number of scholars who are Christians but also legal scholars have said that once you remove the Word of God from the U.S. Constitution, you're left with gobbledygook.
That's right. Okay, we got just a moment here for Mike in Wisconsin. Mike, quickly, you're on the air.
Yes, I'm calling with regard to the issue of the illegal aliens. And regarding Judeo-Christian beliefs, I believe they're based on loving one another. And I'm somewhat surprised that on a Christian radio station, I'm hearing the attitude towards these young illegal aliens. I feel that we should be taking more of a human stance, a Christian stance.
Well, let me ask a question, my friend, and I do want you to stay on after the bumper because I would like to extend my conversation with you. Will you stay on with us, Mike?
I'd be glad to.
Because the issue of what is Christian, what is loving, and what it is, that's a good question. We'll deal with it as we come back. This is Crosstalk on VCY America.
For the Worldview Weekend Minute, I'm Brandon House. Our website is worldviewweekend.com. Today we continue on our list of 20 characteristics of false teachers. Number 14 is false teachers rise from within the church and seek to infiltrate the true church. 2 Peter chapter 2 verse 1 speaks to this, but there were also false prophets among the people, even as there will be false prophets among you, who will secretly bring in destructive heresies, even denying the Lord who bought them, and bring on themselves swift destruction. Jude 4, for certain men have crept in unnoticed, who long ago were marked out for this condemnation, ungodly men, who turn the grace of our God into lewdness and deny the only Lord God and our Lord Jesus Christ. Acts 20:30, also from among yourselves men will rise up, speaking perverse things, to draw away the disciples after themselves. 2 Peter 2:1, Jude 4, and Acts 20:30 tell us false teachers try to infiltrate the church and rise from within, so we must mark them and be on guard.
Okay, we're back with you, and our friend Mike standing by on line number 3. And Mike, repeat that question again, because it was very provocative.
Well, I'm just looking at the issue of the illegal aliens, especially the ones who are younger. Mm-hmm. And from my understanding, these are people who have, through no fault of their own, ended up in this country. And they have gone to the grade schools, the middle schools, the high schools, along with our citizens, become friends with them, have ambitions in their life, you know, as far as raising a family, moving forward, going to college. And I think that was the intent of Obama's initiative, is that they should be given a chance to follow through on those dreams. Why didn't at the Judeo-Christian ethic and belief, I feel that there should be more of a human and Christian response towards these young people.
Okay, Mike, now I'm going to ask you this. Now, if this were the case, then why didn't he stop at age 18? Because that's when a person becomes an adult, and we take care of these kids, they won't have to be deported, etc. But I noticed in your describing the situation, you didn't call them unregistered, you called them illegal.
I was using the term that you were using on your program.
Well, we have to use the term that is used by the law. And the law that we have, which governs our country, is, we recognize the rule of law. And that law doesn't change just because we have fuzzy feelings or something of that nature. There are people that have committed crimes of passion of one kind or another. And just because they have a certain feeling doesn't change the fact that they broke the law. I know someone here recently was telling about they had a very noble purpose in driving at a high speed on a highway, but ultimately ended up breaking the law and had to pay the price. And so the law is what governs, and the moment we deteriorate that law or allow it to be like Swiss cheese and suddenly there's holes in it, then the law means nothing, and then we become lawless. And so let's look at from the standpoint of you're saying going from infancy up through age 30. Whoops, wait a minute. Now they're an adult. Now at that point in time, should they not, if they were brought here illegally, then you have an application for citizenship. Would that not make it benevolent or kind?
The application for citizenship, you're saying?
Yeah, rather than once they become 18 years of age, which we would consider as an adult, then they would have the option to apply, go back through the door legally, instead of simply waiving an amnesty upon everybody up to age 30. Goodness, I began my work here at age 23. I would have been here 7 years, thinking about my age and involved in the kind of work I'm doing. So I guess the issue of what is lawless, what is legal. And that's why we have guys like Jim, who's a lawman who is designed. Do you have the option of just how it feels, Jim, to make your determination of whether or not they're a lawbreaker? Maybe somebody.
No, we should all be equal under the eyes of the law, and there may be mitigating circumstances, but I think that the whole argument that is put forward by the Obama administration is very deceptive. They keep talking about the valedictorians, the military service people, illegal aliens who have joined the military. I don't think anyone wants to see them deported. But, for example, the MS-13 gang, which is a notorious Latino gang in the United States, they have over 50,000 members.
Oh, wow.
They're under 30 years old. Does that mean that they will have amnesty because they avoided being arrested? There are a lot of things that are troubling about this blanket amnesty, that's exactly what it is for almost 1 million people.
There are kids that are just 13 or 14 or 15 years of age that have been tried as an adult in heinous crimes.
There are a lot of young people whose records are sealed. I remember how frustrating it was when we would apprehend somebody for a serious crime, whether it's a homicide or a rape, and we couldn't get at their juvenile records because they were sealed. So those are people also that would benefit from Obama's program. I don't see how they're going to be able to actually check the backgrounds of almost 1 million people to the satisfaction that they will not cause any trouble, they will not kill. I point down to Virginia, that poor nun that was killed by a repeated drunk driver who was an illegal alien, and because they had a sanctuary policy, they continuously let him back out. He was on bail when he killed a nun.
Mm-hmm. We got one or two more calls very quickly here. Corpus Christi, Texas. Austin, very quickly.
Hi, Mr. Jim, just got a comment. We know actually that what Obama did is more like a political ploy to get people to vote for him. But on a more serious note, Jim, you said something that I don't think you have the true facts. You said that what Obama did is unprecedented. Remember that Dick Cheney asserted executive privilege with the conversations he had during the Bush administration, and nobody said anything about it. So it wasn't unprecedented that Obama said asserted the executive privilege. That's number one. Then number two, the same House met the Republicans when they were, I think, about 2007 or 2008. They walked out of Congress because the Democrats were trying to vote on a contempt issue against, I think it was a then Attorney General. So now the Republicans are crying wolf, wolf, when they actually did the same thing during the Bush administration. And also, finally... Austin,
okay, we're totally out of time, but the clock mandates it. And Austin, I wish we had more, but I thank you for your comments from Corpus, and I think your point is well taken. The theme's coming up, and I have no control over that. But, Jim, Kouri, I want you to know how much we appreciate your being with us today.
Oh, anytime, Vic.
And, again, interesting stuff happening. It'll be interesting to watch what happens to Mr. Eric Holder and what's happening with all these. By the way, there are, as I said, 14 pages of executive declarations from our president. Look them up. Just go to Google, and you'll find them. Thanks for joining us on Crosstalk.
Listening to Crosstalk via satellite and the internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Tape Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208, or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.